Ontario is seeing a surge in the amount of people that aren't paying their mortgage. You've also got the Canadian government now accounting for 80% of GDP. We're going to get into that. The falling productivity emergency that the Bank of Canada has talked about that just continues to decline even after their token rate cuts. So anyway, Ontario sees huge surge in people not paying their housing and other bills. Really interesting. Obviously, this came on the back of the Equifax report that we covered yesterday. Very interesting report. If you haven't seen that video, please check it out. So even with interest rates on the decline, people in Ontario are struggling with ongoing affordability crisis when it comes to all sorts of goods and services, especially keeping a roof over their heads. It's no surprise when you look at the rent inflation data, when you look at all the incoming data. It's no surprise to us on this channel that this is the case. On the tail of the news, that accumulated mortgage debt in the province surpassed a record high of $1 billion by the end of last year. StatsCan shows the number of people in the province who are unable to pay their housing and other bills on time continues to grow because guess what? The affordability is a major problem, and the housing bubble that has blown to unprecedented heights in places like Ontario. We've done multiple videos on the crash that's happening in Ontario. So a lot of these people, these homeowners, they can't sell because if they try and sell now, they'll be selling at a loss, and they simply don't have the cash because, like most people in Canada, they just put 90% of their wealth into a real estate purchase. They don't hold anything back. As much money as possible goes into that real estate purchase, and it's just a great shame, to be honest. Not really productive use of all the capital in the country, but malinvestment has been rife for over a decade now. So anyway, based on the numbers from the Equifax Canada report published Tuesday, the number of homeowners who are late on one or more monthly installments on their mortgage has swelled 66.8% from the same time last year. That is a huge increase in the amount of people that are now defaulting on their mortgage. This marks the highest mortgage delinquency rates Ontario has seen since 2014, with over 3,000 home loans in what lenders consider severe delinquency territory. And what's very interesting, guys, is you only have to look at the unemployment rate to realize that this isn't going to be slowing down anytime soon. And it's in fact going to get even worse. You only have to go to Reddit like I did here and search laid off in the Personal Finance Canada subreddit, and you'll just see post after post after post of people who are essentially being laid off here. It's not a good thing, but it's the reality of what is going on in this silent depression that is happening in Canada. As we covered yesterday, food banks are running out of food. This is an absolutely crazy crisis that most Canadians are enduring, and unfortunately it's due to all that malinvestment that I want to point out has happened over when the NDPs and the Liberals have been in, when just the Liberals have been in, and the Conservatives, who are likely going to be in power next time around, were the ones that laid the foundation for this bubble, even though they're now blaming it entirely on the Liberals. And don't get me wrong, I hate Trudeau, I hate the Liberals, but you know, all these status quo politicians and parties are equally to blame here. They've all had something to do with it and are going to be able to do nothing to stop it bursting, as we've seen in countries like Japan when these things happen. So you've now got Canadian government spending now 80% of growth. This is just unbelievable. So we've had another GDP per capita print of a -1, and it just continues to get worse for Canadians. The average Canadian just getting worse and worse for. So on the surface, Canada's economy is ripping higher. Annual real GDP growth climbed to 2.1% in Q2 2024, higher than the consensus estimate. It follows 1.8% growth in Q1, which saw an upward revision from the 1.7% originally reported. By itself, this sounds like the economy is just booming. Heck, it even beat expectations, but most readers likely noticed it didn't keep up with the population. And guys, one thing I also want to point out is this says real GDP growth. This is very, very important for people to understand because a lot of mainstream media are never ever going to point this out. So what they do is they take the nominal GDP growth numbers and they deflate them with the CP CPI, the phony, fake, manipulated CPI that comes from Stats Canada. They deflate it with that, and that then becomes your real GDP number. So obviously, if they were using a more accurate measure for the CPI, like the 1980s CPI or even the 1990s CPI, as I've been saying for the past couple of years, we actually went into the recession in 2022, and we barely came out of the recession from the pandemic only for a couple of quarters during 2021 when you actually deflate it for real inflation numbers. So again, it's really important to understand that, because the manipulation of the data keeps economists from saying Canada's in a technical recession when it's not really technicalities that matter. It's really what's going on. It's the reality of what's going on, not all these stupid manipulated numbers that we can see through on this channel. And that's why I'm so glad to be here and be able to do this, because together we can see that these numbers are so manipulated. So anyway, when adjusted for the population, the picture isn't so rosy. Real GDP per capita declined 0.1% in Q2 2024, with StatCan noting it was the 5th consecutive decline. Per capita growth fell in 7 out of the past 8 quarters, marking recession by some definition. I mean, if you don't think we are in a recession right now, you've got your head well and truly buried in the sand like an ostrich. So, I mean, it's up to you what you do, but if you're not prepared for this, you're going to be scared at some point. So anyway, Canadian per capita GDP is negative for the 5th quarter. So this chart's from RBC. And you can see that, yes, in fact, all the way since Q1 2023, we have been in decline on a per capita basis. And this isn't even the best measure, guys. This isn't even a great measure, because as all the government measures, you have to realize that what they do with this is they split it equally, as if the wealth distribution is even, when the wealth distribution is far from even in this country. What that effectively means is you got the top 10% where their per capita GDP might even be rising substantially, whilst the rest, the other 90%, is absolutely nosediving as more and more wealth gets transferred to the elites and the oligarchs. And unfortunately, the corruption and the fraud that has become rife in Canada, and that Canada is becoming known for, unfortunately, is the big problem that we have in this country. And I don't see anybody out there willing to address that in the political spectrum at all. And then as you get down here, Canadians' households weaken, spending more on necessities. So casting further doubts about the economy's strength are weaker households. Household spending grew 0.2% in Q2 2024, slowing from the 0.9% in Q1. StatCan attributed the minor growth to rising rent, food, and energy costs. Wow, that's really great, isn't it, guys? You've just basically got the essential things that people need to live. That's the only things that they're spending more money on. And most of that is a consequence of inflation. And actually, if you use some realistic number for inflation, they're actually getting less and more people are going hungry. So households spent more on necessities that were not captured in the inflation data, printing growth. And it also says housing investment falls even further, not surprising with everything that's going on in the housing market and the major housing bubbles. Also, Calgary, really interesting right now. So we'll go through the stats of that in another video. It looks like that market is finally topping out as well, although it remains to be seen. So Canadian housing investment slowed further despite spending billions in taxpayer stimulus. Residential investment fell 1.9% in Q2 2024, making the most significant drop in over a year. Leading to the decline were new construction, renovations, and ownership transfer costs. And a lot of the economy, as we know, over 40% revolves around the housing market, and pretty much the rest of it revolves around the government. You've just got 10% in between that doesn't revolve around either. And I'm not just talking about purely the government. I'm talking about all those private businesses that are contracted by the government as well. Because like if the government of Alberta or BC contracts out jobs to build roads, well, guess what? They're still working for the government. That's still government spending that is propping up the economy. economy, even if it goes into a private company's hands. So what's really interesting is also we had productivity for Q1 2024, and guess what, guys? It went back down. So we had that little bump in productivity, and it continues to fall. So again, productivity declining, GDP per capita declining, the unemployment rate rising, interest rates coming down. They're all a sign of economic collapse. The food banks running out are a sign of economic depression. You just can't ignore all these warning signs. I would seriously have a plan in place. Just please have a plan. It's free to do. Anybody can do it, of what you're going to do if you lose your job. Do your budgeting so you know how much money's coming in, how much money's going out. Just simple things like that really make a difference, so you're not scrambling when it really does hit the fan. So anyway, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And if you're looking for a VPN to protect your privacy, you know where to go. Go to expressvpn.com/marketmania, affiliate link in the description. That's the VPN that I use, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.